A 6-year-old girl walked into an animal shelter and almost immediately noticed something that everyone else had been walking past. At the very end of the kennel row lay a dog so thin it was hard to look at for long. His ribs showed through his fur, and he barely moved as he rested against the wall. A bowl of food sat beside him, untouched. Visitors stopped there for a moment, shook their heads, and quietly moved on. But this girl didn't. What happened next would later be replayed again and again on the shelter's security cameras because none of the workers could believe what they were seeing. This dog hadn't eaten in a long time. The staff had tried everything, but day after day, the bowl remained full while the dog slowly grew weaker. The girl's name was Alice. She had always been a little different from other children her age, quiet, patient, more comfortable around animals than people. At school, she struggled to make friends, not because she was unkind, but because she spoke softly and preferred calm moments instead of noisy games. Animals, however, seemed to understand her immediately. A neighbor who lived a few houses away often traveled for work, and whenever he left, Alice would walk over to help care for his dog. She filled his bowl, brushed his fur, and sat beside him on the porch while he rested his head against her knee. The dog listened to her in a way that surprised even his owner. But Alice's parents had always been firm about one thing: they didn't want a dog at home. They worried it would be too much responsibility for a 6-year-old child. So when Alice's school organized a visit to Greenwood Animal Shelter, they agreed. It was just a field trip, a chance to learn about animals and maybe help by bringing drawings and toys. None of them expected that the visit would change two lives forever. While the other children moved excitedly through the building, pointing at playful puppies jumping against their gates, Alice couldn't stop thinking about the dog at the end of the hallway, the one who hadn't even lifted his head as people passed. After a few minutes, she quietly walked back. The dog was still there, still lying in the same place, the bowl of food still untouched. Alice stood and watched him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised a nearby volunteer. She opened the gate and stepped inside. The volunteer started to say something, but Alice had already sat down on the floor beside the dog, leaving enough space so he wouldn't feel trapped. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The dog didn't move, he didn't even look at her. Slowly, Alice reached toward the bowl, picked up a small piece of food, and held it gently in her hand. She didn't push it toward him. She simply waited. The security camera recorded everything. The dog slowly lifted his head. For the first time since arriving at the shelter, he looked at someone with real attention. Then, carefully, he leaned forward and took the food from Alice's hand. The volunteer in the hallway froze. That dog had refused every meal for days. But now, he was eating. Later that evening, the staff replayed the footage again and again, watching the quiet moment when a starving dog finally accepted food. From that day forward, Alice returned to the shelter every afternoon with one of her parents. She sat beside him, feeding him small pieces from her hand, speaking to him in a soft, steady voice. At first, he ate very little. But slowly, day by day, the bowl began to empty. He started to regain strength. He began to stand when she arrived. And then, one day, his tail wagged. During that time, the staff uncovered his story. His name was Atlas. He had once belonged to a retired firefighter named Daniel Harris. For years, they had been inseparable. Daniel had rescued Atlas as a puppy during a house fire, and from that day on, the dog followed him everywhere. But months earlier, Daniel had passed away suddenly. Family members tried to care for Atlas, but he never adjusted. Eventually, he ran away. He was found weeks later near a highway, thin, exhausted, and completely alone. When animal control arrived, Atlas didn't resist. He didn't bark. He didn't try to run. He simply lowered his head and allowed himself to be led away. At the shelter, staff immediately saw how severe his condition was. But it wasn't just physical. There was something deeper. They ran tests, checked for injuries, looked for anything that might explain it. Physically, he could recover. Emotionally, something had broken. "He's shutting down," the veterinarian said quietly. Days passed. Atlas grew weaker. Until the day Alice walked in. When she heard his story, she sat beside him and gently placed her hand on his head. "You're not alone now," she whispered. And from that moment on, she never missed a visit. She didn't rush him, Didn't force him, didn't expect anything. She just stayed. And little by little, Atlas began to change. He lifted his head when he saw her. Then he stood. Then one afternoon, his tail moved. He's waiting for her, one of the staff members said softly. Weeks passed. The routine never changed. But at home, something else did. Alice talked about Atlas constantly. At first, her parents only listened. But then they noticed the way she smiled when she said his name. The way her voice changed. The way she cared. One evening, she asked again, "Can he come home with us?" This time, they didn't answer right away. A few days later, they returned to the shelter together. And before Alice even realized what was happening, the paperwork was already being prepared. Atlas was going home. The first weeks were quiet. Alice gave him space when he needed it, stayed close when he didn't, and continued the same gentle routine she had started at the shelter. Slowly, Atlas began to heal. He gained weight. His strength returned. The emptiness in his eyes faded. Month by month, he transformed. His ribs disappeared. His coat grew healthy. And most importantly, he became a dog again. He ran in the yard. Chased a ball. Followed Alice everywhere. Every morning, he walked with her to the front of the house. And every afternoon, he was already waiting by the door before she came inside. Alice changed, too. At school, she became more open, more confident, more willing to speak and laugh. She still loved quiet moments, but now, she wasn't alone. Sometimes she told stories about Atlas. Sometimes other children asked to meet him. And slowly, things became easier. At home, their days were filled with simple moments. Playing in the yard. Sitting together in the evenings. Walking through the neighborhood with Atlas proudly trotting beside her. Even the neighbor's dog became part of their routine. The two dogs learned to trust each other, running across the grass while Alice watched and laughed. It wasn't something loud. It wasn't something dramatic. But it was everything they both needed. Because the dog who had once stopped eating found a reason to live again. And the girl who struggled to be understood found someone who understood her without words. In the end, they didn't just save each other. They gave each other a life neither of them could have found alone. "You're safe," she would whisper, resting beside him. "I'm right here."
If this tale moved you, if you felt the tension, the heartbreak, and the triumph, please support our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring more thrilling, emotional, and inspiring stories your way. Leave a comment below and let us know what you think. Do you believe dogs have an extraordinary sixth sense? Share your thoughts and personal stories with us. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.